Hey guys, so this video is going to remind you of all the different things, or a lot of the different things we learned about with multiplication this year. So one of the first things we really wanted to make sure that we knew was that multiplication is when we're joining equal groups. So multiplication is kind of like a special type of addition. With addition, you're joining, but it's not always equal. You could have a group of 7 with a group of 12 and join them together. But with multiplication, you're joining equal groups. So after we made sure we knew what multiplication is every time, then we went and we learned some different strategies to show it, okay? So I'm going to be working with this equation here, 3 times 4. And we're talking about that as 3 groups of 4. So 3 times 4, 3 groups of 4. And we were showing it in 4 different ways. 3 groups of 4 with equal groups drawing. On the number line, it's 3 hops of 4. In repeated addition, you can also see 3 groups of 4, and then in an array, you can see 1 group of 4, 2 groups of 4, 3 groups of 4. So over and over again, it's 3 groups of 4, and when you put all of these together, or you join all these hops, or all of these groups together, or all of these circles, the total is 12, and that's called the product in multiplication. So, a lot of times we are working with that unknown product. What do we have when we put all of these 3 groups of 4 together? Then, when we revisited multiplication, we started noticing that the unknown can move around. Okay, so here's the unknown product. This time, it's a different unknown. So, this question is asking 5 groups of what equals 20? So, you might solve it like this. All right, 5 groups. See, my 5 groups is, let's see, well, 5 groups of 1 is 5. Let me add 1 to each one. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm going to stop when I get to 20. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Bingo! So 5 groups of 4 is 20. And then for this one's asking how many groups of 6 equals 12. Well, let's see here. I could write just the number 6. 1 group of 6 is 6. Let me add another group of 6. Oh, 6 and 6 is 12. 2 groups of 6 is 12. So we went from finding the unknown product to then working with the unknown moving around. And when the unknown moves around, we just have to think a little bit differently. All right. Now, moving over here, these were some of our more complicated skills with multiplication. They're kind of like special cases, but they're really good skills to have. So let me go to this commutative property first. So with the commutative property, that lets us be really flexible with multiplication and flip factors around to help us solve in the best way that we want to. So, for example, we really worked to notice that I want that 5 to be in a position where I can then count my best. So instead of 5 groups of 7, let me flip it to 7 groups of 5. And then I can count by 5s. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. So if 7 groups of 5 is 35, then 5 groups of 7 is 35. And one model that helped us prove that was here. So if we go back to an array, this array shows 3 groups of 4. But if I look at it differently, I can see 4 groups of 3. None of my dots went anywhere, so that must mean that 3 times 4 and 4 times 3 both equal 12. So that's that commutative property. Sometimes people call it turnaround facts. So this really helps us to get numbers in a position that helps us do our best counting, our best math, our best thinking. All right, let me move up here to the tens strategy. So we wanted to, with this strategy, there's 2 ways to solve it. I could see, okay, 7 times 30, that's 7 groups of 30. I don't want to draw 30 dots when the numbers are big. I really want to use a different strategy of maybe some 10 sticks. So 10, 20, 30. 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 200. 210. Okay, so that's one strategy you could use because I'm actually showing 7 groups of 30. A different strategy we've used is we started to see a pattern that 7 times 3 can help me with 7 times 30. So we take that 0 off for a short minute. We do 7 groups of 3, and I could draw that down here, which is 21. And then I pop that 0 back on. So 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 30 is 210. And if you notice, this is another way to look at 7 groups of 3 is there's 3 tens in each one. Okay? So, commutative property, looking at equal groups of 10. All right, let's move over to the distributive property. I love the distributive property because it helps me solve equations that are maybe a little too big for me right now. I don't know my facts yet. And actually, this is going to be the first step in when you work with really big numbers. The distributive property is just breaking multiplication into easier multiplication and then adding it back together. So here I have 6 times 8. I'm either going to break apart the 6 or break apart the 8, and I'll do some easier multiplication. Well, we practiced a little bit thinking through which one to break apart. Well, 6 nicely breaks into 5 plus 1. 5 plus 1 is 6. I could break apart the 8, but this one is easier. Since this is the break apart, this one is the one I distribute. Now, look at these easy equations. 8 groups of 1 is 8. 8 groups of 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. All right, I broke it apart. I did way easy multiplication. Now all I need to do is add it back together. So 6 times 8 is 48. And I can use this strategy until I've got all of my single-digit multiplication. It's a great strategy to use. All right, last one, the associative property. So the associative property is when you have more than one factor, or more than 2 factors. Here, look, we had 6 and 8, 7 and 30, 5 and 7, 3 and 4. But here I have 4 and 3 and 5. Well, it doesn't really make sense for me to say 4 groups of 3, groups of 5, like we've been saying. Well, this is something, let me give you an example. There's a roller coaster. In the roller coaster, in a car, there's 4 rows, and each row has 3 seats, but there's 5 cars. So I have more than one multiplication going on at the same time. So what I do is I just focus on 2 of them, solve that, and then bring that third one in. This is where you also want to try to think ahead and think which one is going to help me do my easiest working with numbers. So I could do 4 times 3 and have 12, but then I'm going to have 12 working with the number 12. I could do that if I wanted, because then I would just do 12 groups of 5. Or I could think ahead and I could go, what about 4 groups of 5? 4 times 5 is 20. And then bring down that 3. 20, 20, and 20 is 60. But the cool thing about the associative property, which is also kind of like the commutative property, is I can flip numbers around. If I want to, I could have done 3 groups of 5 is 15, 5, 5, and 5. Then multiply that by 4. Well, some of you might know that 2 groups of 15 is 30, 15 and 15, and another is 30, so together is 60. It's just whatever works best for your brain. All right, so use these reminders as you're working with your multiplication this week. Multiplication, joining of equal groups, and a lot of times it's going to be finding that unknown product, but sometimes that unknown is going to move around. So pause, change your thinking a little bit. Think about what to do when you have perfect groups of 10 or when you have a number in a spot that you want to move around. What if both factors are tricky to work with? Break one apart, easier multiplication, add it back together. And then if you have lots of factors, just focus on 2. 2 at a time, and then bring that third one in. All right.